Hey everybody, this is the May 8th, 2025 Helm Dev meeting. We follow CNCF Code of Conduct, um, so please follow that too while you're on this call. And also these recordings last forever on the internet. So if you don't want something that you say to last forever, don't say it. Um, okay, let's go ahead and I think Robert said you said you'll take notes.
Ooh.
Thank you. So I just added you to that. And then I wanted to note that we have, I think I want to make an announcement, even though I didn't mention it, that there is a release candidate um, for the next 3.18.0 that I think you made last Monday, on Monday, Robert.
Yep, that was me.
Yeah. So we always cut really, and also thank you for that. Uh, I noticed that you did, and that was perfect. We always our schedule is to cut releases before a minor version. We cut a pre-release of that the Monday of the week before, so that people have a chance to test it out and try things out. Um, so go and check that out, and please test it out. Um, and if you're interested in the milestones, you can take a look at the milestones on the Helm project on github.org. So yeah, so the first discussion, I think Matt said that they can't. Oh, he'll be late, so I'm going to bump this down for now. Um, so I think the next discussion is yours, Paige.
Sure. Yeah, so this is my first time here, obviously. So let me know what questions. I'll keep it brief. This is something Scott and I were talking about for a while. It involves some proposed improvements to the Helm documentation site. And the three specific areas encompassed by this HIP, which you can view at the link there, are first, migrating the docs to a new, more modern static site generator to make it a little easier for both users and contributors. And then on the content side, it would involve sort of a re-architecture. So looking at those categories that are in the sidebar of the site and how might the docs be better organized to improve usability and findability of content. And then finally, sort of the smallest item would be adding a little bit more overview content, kind of just that introductory who, what, why, when type information. Ideally, the idea would be that this new doc site could be rolled out with the release of Helm 4, I think is what we were thinking. I realize I'm kind of jumping in and none of you have any context on this, and it's something I've been thinking about for a little bit, but let me know what questions and what type of discussion we'd like to have around that.
So, what is your motivators behind updating it? Like, what's the driver? Just
Yeah,
like I'm
so
bored on a Tuesday, and I figure, you know what, Helm needs some new docs and new site. Let's rock it out. Like, I mean, like I'm just trying to just put all the pieces together so I understand.
yeah, a little bit about me too. I realized I didn't even introduce myself. I'm the docs manager over at Replicated, where Scott and I and actually Evans work together as well. So perhaps one motivator is that this is just, I really love my job and it's kind of fun for me to reorganize documentation. But the other motivator is, and just also from what I've heard from Scott, is that it can be, there are certain challenges with the site right now in terms of functionality, um, keeping it up to date, that there's been just kind of a gap in attention maybe given to those usability concerns.
Mhm.
And this was maybe back in February, Scott and I were looking at it, and I don't recall how the conversation came up. Maybe I was just like, oh, I see some things that could be improved here or something like that. And so we were taking a look at it, and I was like, you know what, I think this is actually pretty doable. So we kind of just wanted to bring it to this group and see what y'all thought.
Okay.
I have a thought, but I was just wondering if like, I mean, you're probably, being a docs person, probably completely sold on a particular framework, but I had an amazing experience
Not really.
with material for MK docs. Are you familiar with that one? It's
Yeah.
just it's beyond
System.
amazing for static site docs stuff, and like it was a game changer in terms of that, and I'd be happy to. I have a lot invested in it, and actually added new features where people could have discussions around doc pages, not only edit them online, but like click and discuss them, that kind of thing, a bunch of stuff. So I would love to. I'd be glad to reach out
Involved.
somehow, and if you want to drop your email, or I could get your info from Scott or something like that. Whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I
happy to
can
share
put
that.
my email
Yeah,
here.
and
That would be really cool. Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
I was just gonna say I'd suggest if I mean there's not definitely not trying to stop you all from connecting with each other individually. You certainly can and should, but also for things like this, it might be useful to discuss in the Slack channel, the Helm Dev Slack channel. And I don't know if I think you got set up on the CNCF Slack page, but I'm not sure if you got set up on the Kubernetes one. So
I don't think so.
Oh, Paige, I can definitely find you on the CNCF Slack. That's been an
yeah.
amazing thing. Every time I meet somebody, that they're there, almost there. So it's been kind of cool.
Yeah. And then
Anyway.
here is the self sign up link page if you want to do that. And then the channel is Helm Dev if multiple people want to have a conversation about this. And I think
Great.
Matt's here and has a hand raised.
Yeah. So just to add to this real quick, one of the things that we do want to keep is try to keep the Helm branding and all of this. We actually have a fairly unique branding. People tend to like it. Some of the tools can be very structured in their layout and their looks and their branding, and that's one of the concerns we've long had. The CNCF does have a docs framework that's Markdown based, even lets you do things like docs for different versions. And I think it's all Hugo based, so it would be sort of an extension of what we already have. And so that's one of the things that we've looked into, because it'd be really nice, the per version stuff, the way we have it, like we've got a v2.helm and things like, it's not pretty. We can do better. And so we looked at that. It was a matter of people coming on with the time and interest to do it, and to update things in a way that still lets us keep a bunch of our branding, will give us those extra features. And so I'm excited if anybody wants to jump on this, because it was a time and space thing, but there's a bunch of cool tools that can be used and things like that.
Cool.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, Scott and I definitely talked about the branding and styles and everything. So there would definitely need to be a lot of exploration and pressure testing and all that kind of stuff before we just charge forward. But if you have any resources from that initial investigation you all did, or anything you'd want to share.
Yeah, I can try and dump links into this document later today to kind of say some of the stuff. But the Linux Foundation has thought a lot about this just for their projects, and they've got people who work on docs and help projects get going and have frameworks and things, because they've thought about the branding and how you write things and the needs. So they've kind of pieced some of this together already. A lot of it they did after Helm site was created, because we're one of the older projects. And so I can go ahead and share some of those links, and I'll stick them in the doc here later today. So if you circle around tomorrow, you should find them.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Thank you.
Some of the stuff, some of that we have. I think you probably remember this, Matt, but I had conversations with asking for support from the docs team and also their web team and helping to update the framework. And generally, they said exactly what Matt said, is that they could do that, but because there's so many CNCF projects, they would prefer for each community to do that, and they could help guide. So they could be a resource to weigh in on this too. Yeah.
I didn't think about that. Totally.
That would be perfect. It fits with the HIP as written, I think, because you said that these would be added, or these would be done within, like, publicly within the community. it wouldn't just be sort of like blindly like spent a ton of time plowing ahead without any feedback. So
Yeah, absolutely right. And there's nothing in the hip itself, if y'all get time to take a look at it. There's no like decided solutions or anything yet. It was really just early days, and we were interested to bring it to this group to just make sure that there's some level of buy-in and interest.
cool. Evans, you have a hand raised?
Yeah, I just wanted to, oh, yeah, there it is. Yeah, thanks for this page. Yeah, good stuff. Have we thought about translations, or is that something that's in scope?
I mean, the Helm
Yeah, it
docs
would
already
have to
have
be.
translations. There already are translations of the Helm docs into various languages.
Yeah, no, I mean, from the structural point of view, how translations would
Yeah.
be easier to contribute, because it's a challenge, as I've seen in raised issues.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest challenges of doing translations is having enough maintainers around to review the translations, make sure nobody injected something bad, like somebody comes along and it's another language, you just approve it, but they put an add in for something, or, you know, didn't just do a direct translation. You actually need to validate a translation is legitimate. Having people who you trust to go ahead and do those kinds of things, and that is a butts and seats problem.
Awesome. Did anyone have anything else they wanted to say about that one before we go on to the next topic? And by the way, Matt, yours is the next topic.
All right. So there is an
Okay.
issue that came up, and somebody was working on it around. So if you have multiple versions of the same chart and you give them an alias, they actually clobber each other today. And to then handle this in a different way to where, well, the charts don't clobber each other. And he suggests, and even did a pull request, at least last time I looked, where what's stored in the chart folder actually references the version in order to do it. I don't know if that's the best way. It may actually be better to store it as the alias when it's expanded. But what do you all think about this particular one?
Well, I wanted to give it a test because we recently merged a fix, not for this specifically, but for something else related to subcharts and aliases. And we'd have to check this ourselves, but someone had just mentioned a few hours ago that their scenario works under the current 317.3. So maybe we can just see for ourselves.
Link that.
Yeah, here's a link. Yeah, that's a user comment, so it's I haven't tried this yet.
Yeah, and for some of this, it's really what's in the charts folder shouldn't be decompressed. So I'll dig a little bit more into this, but I wanted to just get some thoughts that folks had on this and see if there's something that I didn't catch. So I'll poke at this one again next time I go review all the things.
I just want to, yeah, and by saying that, I didn't want to like circumvent the conversation, just making sure. I'm just taking a look over it to make sure I understand what you mean about the decompress or the unpacking.
And Matt, this ties back to the PR the same guy had. Is that correct? Let's be
Yes.
main.
Yes. Yep.
So if we look at, he has a PR, and then Matt's put warnings on. I'm gonna link it here.
Okay.
Yep. He put PRs because he's got an idea on how to handle it. There's something here that isn't clicking for me, but I've been scatterbrained lately. So I'm going to go back at this one, but I wanted to get some other eyes on this, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Got it. Thanks, Matt.
That makes sense. Okay, I'll look at it too. Okay. Boop. Yeah, so the next one was, I don't know that there's much we need to discuss on this call about this. It's more of just a shout out to other maintainers to take a look again at this at the sequencing proposal. I know it was brought up, if I understood correctly, I watched the recording of the meeting where Evans brought this up, and um it sounded like other maintainers were um in approval of this direction. The only change that was made, I think, since then was addressing Joe had a comment about rollbacks. So I wonder if we want to discuss that part. If anyone wants to discuss that part at all, or if it's self-explanatory now.
Did we get into performance and some of the things? So let's say you've got layering and dependent charts, right? Is it discussed? So I've got a dependent chart and it's got layers, how those layers interact with the parent charts. Like, do you do all the layers for a dependent chart first and then all the layers for a parent one? Or do they intermix? Is that covered in there?
It is. Or actually, do you want to cover that, Evans?
Yeah, it's
Or
covered.
address?
Yeah, it's covered. Each of them is handled as a sandbox, so there's no dependency. Each chart would be handled.
So you handle the dependent ones, each in their own sandbox, making their own individual calls for each layer. So there's 5 layers in the child and 3 in the parent. You do the first 5 in the child, then you come into the parent and do the 3.
Correct. So there is, I think I do call out that the time would increase dramatically. Well, not dramatically, but it would increase depending on how long the waits are. But I probably can add a statement there saying that, making that clear. But yes,
and the weights with the QoS numbers to make sure we don't make too many calls against Kubernetes in a certain period of time. Okay, I'll go ahead and review it, but I know there's a bunch around performance and impact of layers and dependencies. And if you've got 2 dependencies next to each other, are those handled in parallel, or do you pick each dependency up one at a time and do it? So say a parent chart has 5 dependencies. Do you do all 5 dependencies layers in parallel, or do you do those sequentially?
Those would be, yeah.
I think I could answer if that's helpful, Evans. I don't know because we talked about this pretty in depth. But then correct me if I'm wrong about any of it. The HIP has essentially 3 related proposals as part of it. That could be orthogonal. But the 2 that relate to what you're saying is the ability to order subcharts, and then is one, and the ability to order resources within a subchart or a subchart or any chart is the other. And so if you don't order the subcharts, then each of them will work in their own sandbox. The idea is they would continue to work in parallel. Anything that doesn't have ordering would continue to work in parallel. If I understood that correctly.
I'll have to go read it. I'll have to go read it because as soon as you get into some of this, you can hit things like large slowdowns in performance for installing things, which then will affect maybe your higher level Helm timeouts. You can run into, too much beating on the Kubernetes API can run into quality of service limits, which there are in some of these clients and things. And we have people who run into those, which is why we have the ability to override that now. And so I'll read it because I'll probably need to understand, but that's a finicky place when you're talking performance API calls and things like that.
Yeah. My thought actually, if I'm not mistaken, is that it would have fewer concurrent API calls than a chart would if everything were sent in one.
No, because when you send it in one call, you can dump
actually,
all that YAML up all at once. So now if you're sequencing it, you make one call to send us some of it up, another call to send some more of it up, so another call to send some more of it up. You've got more round trips, that's right. More opportunities for timeouts and problems, because you may send one part of it up and then it fail at another part to send up. So now you're in an error state, but you sent part of it up. How do you recover from that?
Right, that's right. Yeah, I think the idea about recovery is covered in the rollbacks question that Joe asked. The API question, that is something I think we that would need to be looked at. Yeah, you're right. Sorry, my bad. The rollbacks thing, I think Joe was asking, could there be a partial success state? And we clarified that the HIP is not in any way trying to change the idea of subcharts being installed as separate releases. That's covered in the issue that you mentioned, Matt, that if you need releases to be covered, to be upgradable separately or to show up separately, that you should just simply make them separate charts. So this just says that if anything fails at any point, then it stops everything and a full rollback is initiated. So
Well, it shouldn't be unless it's atomic, right? So you could end up in an error
if it's
state.
atomic, is what I
Okay.
meant. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That's right. Oh, but
Okay.
it would, if it's not atomic, then it would not roll back everything, but it would stop at that point just because of, or anything else that depends on it would stop, because that's the whole conceit of the HIP, that there's dependencies. Yeah.
I'll review it and take a look. Okay.
Did I cover that in the way that you thought it should be, Evans?
Yeah, you did. The one bit that you won't find there, Matt, is there's no prescription on will things run in parallel, they run sequentially. Now, if we need to think through that and reflect that in the HIP, I thought that was more of an implementation detail. I can still add that.
I'll think it through and take a look at that. But that is an area where we might need to or want to, or at least look at the implications. You know, we're adding a whole bunch more API calls in when we do this kind of thing, and that's performance implications, timeout implications, Kubernetes API and handling more calls implications, how fast you fire, things like that. There's just more to it now, and that kind of thing. Okay.
Cool. Thanks. Okay, and then I think the next topic that has 6 minutes now is Go YAML updates for Ingi.
That's plenty of time. So I'm not sure where I left off last week, but I think I did mention that I talked to Raphael, and he's awesome and super busy and wants to make sure it lands in a good spot, but he can't really help out. I came up with a kind of I'm not sure if I told you this last week, but after thinking on it kind of hard, I was like, I think that the right thing is to not have Raphael transport that repo directly to YAML.
Sorry, do you mean Gustavo or do you?
Yeah, I said Raphael.
Okay. Okay.
Gustavo.
Just making sure.
Yes.
That's okay.
No problem. Is to not have Gustavo transfer ownership over that to me, but or to the YAML org to be specific. But to just go with the repo that we've already created and work on that, and then get people to change that. I think I can easily convince Raphael to have his repo point to this, saying it's now being maintained over here, but then it would be up to people to make that switch, and I just think that's more the right thing to do. Then I went through a bunch of this with DIMS yesterday. You know, DIMS, right? I know Matt does for sure, and it's with AWS. Everybody seems to know DIMS. He's awesome. And he suggested, so one cool thing is like the top 3 YAML assets of being PyYAML, LibYAML, and GoYAML all being under the YAML org is good for a lot of reasons. Maybe not the least of which is finding funding for supporting YAML from different places. But he suggested that V2 and V3 kind of stay the same and go into maintenance mode, and that all new stuff due on a V4. And I want to move all 3 projects together because they're all ports of each other. They're all PyYAML was ported to LibYAML, was ported to GoYAML, and Raphael said that he was very specific on following that structure. So it should be, you know, easy to. I even played around with like having a like cursor LLM thing last week. I just pointed it at a whole list of a repo and said, find the 3 easiest thing. It was somebody else's repo and said, find the 3 easiest things to fix. But like I could do that in concert, you know, it could do all of that together and actually drive forward the changes because anyway.
So real quick, Ingi, so for note wise, are we not forking it, or are we going to leave it in the current repo? Like I'm trying to clarify so I can take the notes. I'm sorry.
Sorry. So it's not a. I made a fork initially for a second, but then I'm like, a fork doesn't act like a real repo. So if this is going to be, I just made it not a fork and pushed up a new repo that was a copy of his at that state. Oh,
Mhm.
And to be
mention
clear,
the biggest news here
Mhm.
is that DIMS gave a pull request that took all of the work that the SIGs, Kubernetes SIGs fork of this made 3 years ago that included all the source code of V2 and V3 in it. He took all of the changes that have been made and ported them back to this and is ready to upstream depend on the new YAML. So there won't be this fork anymore. They'll still have the repo and what else ever they do with it, but it will depend on this upstream. And that's what we want to, he wants to help convince other people.
We're going to keep the upstream and we're not going to use the fork then. Is that correct?
So,
No,
Ingy,
like,
I think the question
Raphael's
is,
thing is, yeah. Go ahead.
where does the repo live that everybody works on?
In YAML org.
In
That
YAML
will-
org. Is it a transfer of the repo to the YAML org or a fork of the repo in the YAML org?
To be decided, but I'm almost certain now that, like, with Raphael's concerns, that I can't really, convince him that in a year from now things won't peter out and like he won't have ownership and he can't do anything about it. I'm saying no, we're just actually going to go forward with the YAML org thing, starting off where you left off. You'll promote it, and then they'll live separately. So
it'll be his.
Nothing
He
will-
wants it to be a fork. The pointer currently exists. Go package.in. Is he
I
going
know.
to point that to your repo, or did he already?
I would suggest that he didn't. And Dim suggested that I come up with a new vanity URL that points to the new repo.
Okay.
And so people will have to purposefully change to this new repo, the new maintained repo. So we're going to wait. We need to do a few things. One is get the vanity URL and that kind of thing, and the governance set up. But after that, we will start actively saying that people should switch to this. In fact, and Raphael will be a part of that by changing his thing on the README, which now says unmaintained, to say go to the YAML copy. And that's
Okay.
yeah.
Nope. I was asking these questions not to say what should happen, but for clarity, so we all know, and Robert can take notes, and we just have a good
Yeah.
idea. That's it.
Thanks, Matt.
But to be,
And
but to
thanks.
be,
And
Matt, I
so-
really would appreciate. Does that sound good? Like, it doesn't sound like it sounds bad to you from knowing you.
No, it sounds
Okay.
absolutely acceptable. And quite frankly, anybody who's got a dependency on the old location where somebody hasn't done it can use the replace directive in your Go module file to tell it to use the newer location instead. So we do have a method forward for places that don't update or don't update in a timely manner that we can communicate.
Excellent.
Great.
I want to know
And
more
sorry,
about that later.
everyone, I'm gonna
Yeah,
just
fine.
note that it's top of the hour, just to respect everyone's time. But that all was awesome. Does anyone want to just shout out offering to host to moderate the next meetup?
I got it.
Okay. And take
I'll
notes?
take notes.
Okay, great. And I think the rest we can if anyone like maintainers want to stay on and just sort of fill out some of the other stuff, they can, but anyone else who wants to drop, feel free. And any maintainers that need to drop, feel free. Okay, thanks, Matt. Okay, and then I think at least core maintainers that are here, who can be other maintainers that are here are George, Evans, and Robert, or actually I guess Evans, they're a triage maintainer, but George and Robert. Can you all be here next week or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we recording still, by the way? You might
We are recording. Just wanted to sort that out. Thanks
Yep.
very much. I'll stop the recording, and if folks want to stay for a moment, they can.
All right.
See
Thanks,
you
everyone.
next week. Yep.